Please, arrest us. We want to go to jail.
The Georgia night was colder than it should have been for early spring. A thin fog rolled over the two-lane highway that cut through the pine woods, and the sound of crickets was drowned out by the slow, uneven footsteps of two small children. Jaden Carter, 10 years old, carried a torn backpack slung over one shoulder. Beside him, his twin sister Amira struggled to keep up, her pink sneakers soaked from the damp grass. "Jay, my legs hurt," she whispered. "I know," he said quietly, gripping her hand tighter. "Just a little more. We can't stop yet." The beam of a distant truck light swept across the dark road, and both twins dove into the ditch, holding their breath until it passed. Only when the taillights disappeared did Jaden dare to whisper again. "You okay?" Amira nodded, though her lips trembled. "Where are we going?" Jaden hesitated. He wanted to sound confident, like Mom used to when things went bad. But all he had was a vague plan he didn't even believe in. "Somewhere safe," he said finally. Amira sniffled. "Away from Earl?" Jaden's chest tightened. "Yeah, away from him." They walked in silence for a while, following the faded yellow line like it might lead them out of hell. The moon peeked through the clouds, lighting up the outline of a roadside diner about half a mile ahead. A neon sign flickered weakly. Gracie's Truck Stop Cafe. Jaden stared at it like salvation. "Come on, maybe they'll let us stay till morning." As they drew closer, the low rumble of engines broke through the quiet. Not cars this time, motorcycles. The sound grew louder, closer, like thunder rolling down the road. Amira froze, clutching her brother's arm. "Jay, what is that?" He turned, eyes wide. Headlights, dozens of them, cutting through the fog. Within seconds, a convoy of bikers pulled into the diner lot, their jackets marked with the symbol of a black vulture spreading its wings. The air vibrated with the sound of their machines. Jaden and Amira crouched behind a bush near the edge of the lot, watching as the men dismounted. Big, rough-looking guys, tattoos, scars, leather, and confidence, Amira whispered. "They look scary." Jaden didn't answer. He was watching one of them, a tall, broad man with gray in his beard and a heavy chain around his neck. He laughed loud, slapping another biker on the back. But when he turned toward the fog, his smile faded, replaced with something alert, protective. That was Mason Grizz Walker, leader of the Iron Vultures. MC Jaden didn't know his name yet, but he recognized the way the others moved around him, like soldiers around a commander. Then Amira said something that made Jaden's heart stop. "Jay, maybe they can help us." He shook his head instantly. "No, we don't know them, but they look strong," she said. "They could stop Earl." Before he could stop her, Amira stepped out of the shadows, walking toward the men. "Amira!" he hissed, too late. The bikers had already noticed her. Grizz turned toward the movement, frowning. "Whoa there, sweetheart. You lost?" Jaden ran up behind his sister, his small voice breaking. "Please, sir. Can you arrest us?" Grizz blinked, confused. "Arrest you?" Jaden's voice trembled. "Yes, sir, please. We didn't do nothing wrong. But if you don't lock us up, he's gonna find us." The bikers exchanged uneasy looks. "Who's gonna find you, kid?" Grizz asked. Jaden swallowed hard, his hand shaking as he pointed back down the dark road. "Our stepdad." Grizz's expression darkened instantly. He took off his gloves and crouched to their level. "You two better come inside. Start talking." Amira's eyes filled with tears. "You promise you won't send us back?" Grizz nodded slowly. "Not till I know what you're running from." But what Grizz didn't know was that by sunrise, he'd find out exactly who the twins were running from, and why the man chasing them wasn't just their stepfather. He was a name the Iron Vultures thought they'd buried years ago. Inside Gracie's Truck Stop Cafe, the warm smell of coffee and fried eggs did little to calm the storm that had just walked in. The Iron Vultures filled half the diner, their leather vests draped over chairs, boots heavy on the tile. The waitress, an older woman named Mabel, stared at the two kids huddled in the corner booth, but didn't say a word. She knew the club, and she trusted Grizz more than she trusted most of the county's cops. Grizz slid a cup of cocoa in front of the twins. "Drink up. You both look like you've been walking half the night." Amira's fingers wrapped around the warm mug, but she didn't sip it. Jaden kept glancing at the windows, eyes darting every time headlights passed outside. "All right," Grizz said gently, leaning forward. "Now tell me what's going on. Why'd you two ask to be arrested?" The twins exchanged looks. Amira nudged Jaden, whispering, "You tell him." Jaden hesitated. "Our stepdad got out of jail last week. Mama said he was better now, but he ain't. He came home drunk last night. Grizz's jaw clenched, and Jaden's eyes filled with tears. He hit her again. I tried to stop him. He threw me into the wall. Amira's voice broke as she whispered. He said next time he'd hurt us worse. Mama told us to run. The entire diner fell silent. Even the jukebox in the corner seemed to go quiet. Grizz exhaled slowly, rubbing his beard. Where's your mama now? Jaden swallowed. We don't know. She told us to meet her at the church in town, but she never showed. Across the booth, Troy Diesel Harris, the club's heavy-set enforcer, muttered under his breath. Sounds like another coward taking his anger out on kids. Grizz shot him a sharp look. Not for being wrong, but because the anger behind Diesel's tone said he'd been through something similar. Grizz leaned forward again. All right, listen. You two did good by coming here. Ain't nobody gonna touch you while I'm breathing. You hear me? The twins nodded, relief washing over Amira's tear-streaked face. But before Grizz could ask more, Nick Bones Alvarez walked in from outside, his brow furrowed. Boss, we got a problem. Grizz straightened. What kind? Bones dropped a folded piece of paper onto the table. Sheriff's office just put out a notice. Amber Alert, 2 missing kids, Jaden and Amira Carter. Says their stepfather claims the mom's unstable and ran off with the kids. Jaden's eyes widened. He's lying! Amira began to cry again. He's gonna make them send us back. Grizz's voice dropped, calm but dangerous. Not if I can help it. He read the notice again, his expression darkening. The signature at the bottom caught his eye. Deputy Earl Simmons. Grizz froze. He knew that name. The same name stitched across a prison jacket from years ago. The man the vultures once chased out of town after he'd nearly beaten a local boy to death. Grizz's blood ran cold. Simmons! He muttered under his breath. Diesel frowned. You know this guy? Grizz nodded slowly. Yeah, and if he's back in town, this ain't about a custody fight. This is a setup. He turned back to the twins. Your stepdad ever mentioned someone named Hollow Creek? Jaden blinked. That's where he takes his friends to drink. Out by the river. Grizz exchanged a look with Bones. Hollow Creek wasn't just a hangout. It was a known drop spot for dirty deals and stolen bikes. He stood, tossing a few bills on the counter. Get the kids to the clubhouse. I'll find their mama before the sheriff does. Diesel frowned. You going alone? Grizz pulled his gun from his jacket, checking the chamber. No, I'm taking the pass with me. But as Grizz walked out into the night, he didn't know that Deputy Earl Simmons already knew exactly where the twins were. Because someone inside the Iron Vultures had just made a phone call that would betray them all. The night had swallowed the road whole. The only sound was the low growl of Grizz's Harley cutting through the fog as he tore down County Road 14. His headlight caught glimpses of broken mailboxes, sagging fences, and the occasional stray dog darting into the dark. He'd been in this county his whole life, long enough to know when something didn't smell right. And tonight, the air reeked of old ghosts. He replayed the Amber Alert notice in his head. The name Deputy Earl Simmons burned into his mind. The man had once been nothing but a local thug. Mean, drunk, dangerous. 10 years ago, Grizz and his crew ran him out of town after catching him shaking down a single mother outside the mill. That woman's name had been Dana Carter. Now she was missing, and Simmons was wearing a badge. Back at the Iron Vultures clubhouse, things weren't calm either. The twins sat on an old couch in the lounge, surrounded by worn leather, steel helmets, and the faint smell of engine oil. Troy Diesel Harris handed them a blanket and a soda. You two just make yourselves at home, he said gently, trying to sound casual, even though his tattooed arms were trembling slightly. Ain't nobody getting to you here. Amira clutched the blanket to her chest. You think he'll find Mama? Diesel smiled faintly. If anyone can, it's Grizz. That man could track a ghost through a hurricane. Jaden frowned. Why's he helping us? He don't even know us. Diesel looked at him for a long second before answering. 'Cause some of us grew up wishing somebody would have helped us. The room fell quiet. Outside, Bones paced along the porch, smoking nervously as headlights approached in the distance. Who's that? Diesel called out. Bones flicked his cigarette into the dirt. Relax, it's just Ricky. He was on lookout. A young biker, barely in his 20s, rolled up on a dirt bike and parked beside the fence. He looked pale. Boss said no phones, Diesel reminded him. Yeah, Ricky mumbled, shoving his hands in his pockets. I just called my cousin to see if she's heard anything about the sheriff. That's all. But Bones noticed the kid's hands were shaking. His gut twisted. Inside the clubhouse, the twins huddled on the couch. Jaden was half asleep, his head resting on Amira's shoulder. She whispered, Do you think we'll ever see Mama again? Jaden's voice was soft but steady. Yeah, we have to. A sudden knock rattled the clubhouse door. Diesel stiffened. We ain't expecting nobody. Bones peeked through the blinds and froze. Oh, hell! Out in the driveway, 3 black SUVs idled, their headlights cutting through the fog like spotlights. Men in deputy uniforms stepped out, rifles slung across their chests. Diesel's blood ran cold. Simmons! The door flew open before he could react. Deputy Earl Simmons stepped in, his badge shining under the dim light. His grin was smug and familiar, the kind that promised violence. Well, well, he drawled. Ain't this a cozy little hideout? Amira gasped, clutching Jaden's arm. Diesel stepped forward. You don't belong here, Earl, Simmons smirked. Funny. I was just thinking the same about those 2 kids you're harboring. You know, that's a crime. Bones' hand inched toward his holster. You show up here with a fake warrant, you better be ready for a fight. Earl's smile faded. Oh, it's no fake, son. And you're gonna hand over those kids before I make this messy. Diesel's finger twitched toward his weapon. But before anyone could move, Ricky stepped out from behind the pool table. Trembling. Please, he said, voice cracking. Just let him take them. He said he'd call off the heat on the club. Diesel turned to him in disbelief. You called him? Ricky's face fell. I didn't mean to. I thought Simmons raised his gun. Too late for apologies, boy. Outside, engines roared, Grizz's bike leading a swarm of iron vultures back toward the clubhouse. He was coming in fast, and by the time he got there, blood would already be on the floor. The iron vulture's engines screamed down the dirt road like a thunderstorm made of steel and fury. Mason Grizz Walker led the pack, his headlight cutting through the fog, his jaw locked tight. The call from Bones had been short, panicked, and full of gunfire before it cut off. Clubhouse. Simmons found us. That was all Grizz needed to hear. He twisted the throttle, heart pounding, every instinct he'd buried for years roaring back to life. Back at the clubhouse, Earl Simmons stood in the middle of the main room, gun aimed at Diesel, his badge glinting under the single flickering light. Step aside, Simmons snarled. You don't want to die over somebody else's kids. Diesel's voice was low, steady. You ain't taking them anywhere. Ricky trembled near the wall, tears streaking down his face. I just wanted him to leave us alone. Bones whispered to Diesel. 3 of them outside, 1 in here. We can take 'em. Diesel nodded, gripping the edge of the pool table for cover. On 3. But before they could move, Simmons fired. The bullet slammed into the table, splinters flying. Amira screamed as Jaden pulled her behind the couch. Stay down! Diesel roared. Bones fired back, hitting one of the deputies in the doorway. The man dropped instantly, his rifle clattering to the ground. Then came the sound that changed everything, the roar of Harley engines. Outside, the iron vultures burst through the fog like a wave of vengeance. Grizz's bike skidded sideways as he jumped off, gun drawn. Inside, Simmons cursed and grabbed Amira by the arm. You come with me, girl, or your brother's next, Jaden shouted. Let her go! And lunged, but the gun barrel swung toward him. A shot rang out. The next second felt like slow motion, Amira's scream. Diesel diving forward, Simmons stumbling back, hit square in the shoulder. Grizz stood in the doorway, smoke rising from his pistol. You lay one more finger on that child, and I'll make sure you don't get a second chance. Simmons gritted his teeth, clutching his wound. You just made a big mistake, Walker. You don't know who you're messing with. Grizz stepped closer, his voice a growl. I know exactly who I'm messing with. The same coward we ran out of Raven County 10 years ago. Simmons smirked through the pain. Yeah, well, I came back. Got myself a badge this time. Ain't that something? Before Grizz could respond, Simmons tossed a smoke grenade toward the door. The room filled with thick, choking clouds. When it cleared seconds later, he was gone. Son of a... Diesel coughed, waving the smoke away. Grizz rushed to the twins. You 2 hurt? Jaden shook his head, eyes wide. He took something from Mama's bag before he left. It was a flash drive. Grizz froze. What kind of drive? Don't know, Jaden said. Mama said it had proof. Bones frowned. Proof of what? Grizz's eyes darkened. Whatever it is, Simmons wants it bad enough to kill for it. He turned to Ricky, who still stood shaking near the doorway. You called him. You brought this on us. I'm sorry, Ricky cried. He said he'd burn the place down if I didn't. Grizz grabbed him by the vest and slammed him against the wall. You ever betray this club again, I'll hand you to him myself. Then he released him and turned to Bones. Get the kids to the safe house. Diesel, help me track Simmons before he disappears. Diesel nodded. You got it, boss. As Grizz stepped out into the cold night, his headlights swept across a patch of muddy ground. Tire tracks, fresh ones. leading toward the old quarry road. He smirked grimly. Gotcha. But what Grizz didn't know was that Simmons wasn't running. He was leading them, straight into a trap. And at the end of that road, someone was waiting. Someone Grizz once called brother. The road to Redwater Quarry hadn't been used in years. The cracked asphalt was swallowed by weeds, and the trees leaned in so close it felt like the woods themselves wanted to hide what lay ahead. Mason Grizz Walker rode in silence, headlights cutting through mist and dust. Diesel followed close behind, his engine humming low like a warning. When they reached the end of the road, Grizz killed the engine. The night fell dead quiet. There, Diesel whispered, pointing to the far end of the pit. A faint light flickered near an old shack by the rocks, the kind used by miners decades ago. Grizz nodded. He's here. They moved on foot, guns drawn, boots crunching softly on the gravel. As they got closer, they could hear voices. 2 men arguing. I told you, I need more time, one shouted. You've had 10 years, another snapped. Grizz's stomach twisted at the second voice. He knew it. He peered around the corner and froze. Inside the shack, Earl Simmons stood beside a table stacked with cash and small plastic bags. And across from him, half hidden in shadow, was a man wearing an old Iron Vulture's cut. His beard was shorter now, hair streaked with gray. But there was no mistaking him. Caleb Razor Dean. A name Grizz hadn't spoken in almost a decade. Diesel's whisper was low and furious. That ain't possible. Razor's dead, Grizz's jaw clenched. Guess hell let him out early. Inside, Razor leaned against the table, lighting a cigarette. You were supposed to keep her quiet, he said to Simmons. That was the deal. Simmons glared back. You think I planned for her to talk? Grace Carter ran her mouth to the wrong people. Grizz's pulse jumped. Grace Carter. He mouthed the name to Diesel, and they both realized the same thing at once. Grace Carter wasn't just some random woman. She was the twins' mother. Razor exhaled smoke. And what about the flash drive? Got it, Simmons said. Kids had it the whole time, Razor smirked. Then we finish this tonight. No more loose ends, Grizz raised his gun, whispering, on my mark. But before he could signal, Diesel's boot slipped on the gravel, the faintest scrape, enough to turn Razor's head. Company, Razor muttered, pulling his pistol. The shack exploded with gunfire. Grizz dove for cover behind a rusted barrel, firing back. Diesel hit the ground, bullets slicing through the air. Sparks flew as one round hit a propane tank, flames licking across the dirt. Simmons bolted for the side door, clutching the flash drive. Go! Grizz shouted. Get the drive. Diesel chased after him, weaving through the smoke. Razor fired again, his bullet grazing Grizz's arm. Didn't think I'd see you again, old man. Razor taunted. Grizz gritted his teeth. Yeah, I was hoping the same. They collided. 2 men who'd once ridden side by side, now locked in a fight that felt more like punishment than battle. Razor slammed him against the table, sending cash and guns flying. You never understood, Razor shouted. The Vultures could have owned this town, but you had to go soft, helping strays, saving kids. Grizz headbutted him, blood running from his nose. You call that power? You're just another coward hiding behind broken promises. Razor pulled his knife, but before he could swing, a gunshot cracked from the door. Razor froze. His knife clattered to the floor. Behind him stood Diesel, his pistol still smoking. End of the road, brother, Diesel said. Razor fell to his knees, gasping. You think you've saved them? You got no idea what's coming. Grizz grabbed his collar. Then start talking. Razor's lips curled into a bloody grin. Ask Dana if she's still alive. He slumped forward, dead. Grizz and Diesel locked eyes, both realizing what that meant. Grace Carter wasn't the mother. Dana Carter was the twins' real mother, and she was still out there. But she wasn't hiding. She was being kept, and the man holding her prisoner was already on his way to the Iron Vulture's clubhouse, with Jaden and Amira still inside. The first glow of dawn crept over Raven County, painting the clouds blood orange. At the edge of town, the Iron Vulture's clubhouse sat silent. But inside, fear hummed like an engine ready to blow. Jaden and Amira hadn't slept. They sat on the old couch under a blanket that still smelled of gasoline and leather. Bones checked the windows every few minutes, muttering to himself. He was nervous. Too quiet. Where's Mr. Grizz? Amira asked, voice trembling. Bones turned. He'll be back soon, kid. Don't you worry. Ain't no man alive that can keep him down. Jaden frowned. Then why do you look scared? Bones didn't answer. He pulled the curtain back again, eyes flicking to the road. Because I know how men like Simmons think. They don't stop at warnings. They hit where it hurts. And he was right. Out beyond the tree line, 5 black SUVs crawled down the dirt road like predators. Their engines purred low, steady, precise. Inside the lead car, Earl Simmons grinned through the pain in his bandaged shoulder. "Wake up, Raven County. It's time these bikers learned what happens when they cross the badge." Beside him sat a woman in a torn flannel shirt, wrists bound, bruised but alive. Dana Carter. Her eyes burned with defiance. "You think hurting them's gonna fix you, Earl?" He smirked. "Oh, I don't want to hurt them, darling. I want them to watch." Dana spat blood onto the floorboard. "You'll never get away with this," Earl chuckled. "Already am," he radioed the others. "Move in. No survivors." Inside the clubhouse, Bones caught sight of the vehicles seconds before they reached the gate. "Oh, hell no." He grabbed his shotgun. "Kids, I back room now." Jaden's heart pounded. "What's happening?" "Trouble." Before he could explain, the first explosion hit. The front gate blew inward, flames shooting high. Tires screeched as the SUVs rammed through, men pouring out in tactical vests. The same Falcon insignia stamped on their sleeves. "Bones." Diesel's voice cracked through the radio on the counter. "We're on our way! Hold that place down!" Bones ducked behind a table, firing through the front window. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the room. "Get down!" he yelled. Jaden pulled Amira into the back hallway, adrenaline drowning his fear. "This way!" The gunfire outside was deafening, flashes lighting up the walls like lightning. In the chaos, Amira's eyes caught something. A woman stumbling from one of the SUVs. Hands tied, guards shoving her forward. "Mama!" she screamed. Jaden grabbed her arm. "Wait!" But Amira bolted through the open door before he could stop her. "Amira, no!" Outside, Simmons turned at the sound of her voice, his face twisting into a cruel grin. "Well, look who it is." He yanked Dana upright and pushed her forward. "Go on, sweetheart. Tell your kids how much fun you've been having without them." Dana gasped, voice shaking. "Jaden! Amira! Get inside!" Simmons laughed, pressing the barrel of his pistol against her neck. "You ain't in charge here, darlin'." Jaden stood frozen on the porch, torn between running and fighting. Bones fired another round, hitting one of the Falcons, but more kept coming. Then the rumble came, faint at first, then louder, closer. The road behind the Falcons began to tremble. Grizz and Diesel roared through the smoke with a dozen iron vultures, engines howling like a war cry. Grizz's shotgun barked twice before he even hit the brakes, taking out the lead SUV's windshield. "Get those kids," he shouted. Bones pulled Jaden back inside as Grizz charged forward, using his bike as a moving shield. Simmons fired wildly, dragging Dana toward his car, but she bit down hard on his hand, spun free, and shouted, "Mason! The drive! He's got it!" Grizz raised his gun. "Then I'll take it back." The two men locked eyes, and for the first time, Simmons looked afraid, because he realized the mistake he'd made. He hadn't just started a gunfight. He'd started a war with men who had nothing left to lose, and Mason Walker wasn't coming for justice anymore. He was coming for vengeance. The sun was just breaking the tree line, turning the fog gold and red as if the sky itself was bleeding. Engines roared, glass shattered, and smoke rolled across the yard of the Iron Vulture's clubhouse like a living thing. Mason Grizz Walker tore through the wreckage, firing from the saddle of his Harley before it even stopped moving. His shotgun boomed, each blast echoing like thunder through the pines. Behind him, Diesel, Bones, and the rest of the crew fanned out in formation, a wall of leather and iron meeting the Syndicate's black-clad soldiers head-on. Bullets ricocheted off bikes and metal. One of the vultures, Ray, went down with a shout, clutching his shoulder. Diesel dragged him behind a truck, shouting orders over the gunfire. "Flank left! Push him back toward the road!" Grizz ducked behind the burned gate, reloading fast. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Jaden trying to pull Amira back inside the clubhouse, while Dana struggled to untie her wrists. "Stay low," he barked. "Don't you two move till I say so." But Simmons wasn't done. He crouched behind his SUV, blood seeping through his bandage, pistol steady as a snake's fangs. "You think you can win this, Walker? You think this is about those kids?" he yelled. Grizz fired back, his shot tearing the side mirror clean off. "It's always been about those kids. You just didn't know it." Simmons ducked down, smirking. "That drive you're so proud of? It ain't evidence. It's insurance. Grace's insurance. She took down half the Falcons, and she took you down with them." Grizz frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Check your own damn club records," Simmons sneered. "Your old brothers weren't just riding for freedom. They were moving Falcon cash, blood money. Grace found out. She tried to burn it, and we burned her instead." The words hit like a bullet to the chest. For a split second, Grizz froze. That was the truth he'd buried. The Iron Vultures hadn't just fought the Falcons years ago. They'd worked for them. And the only reason Grizz walked away with his life was because Grace Carter took the fall. Rage took over. Grizz kicked off the gate, sprinting through smoke towards Simmons. Bullets whizzed past him, bits of gravel exploding at his feet, but he didn't stop. He tackled Simmons to the ground, the two of them rolling across the dirt. Simmons swung first, the butt of his gun cracking across Grizz's jaw. Grizz spat blood and slammed his fist into Simmons's throat. "You talk too damn much," Grizz growled. They grappled, fists landing heavy and fast. Simmons reached for his pistol, but Grizz caught his wrist, twisting it until the bone popped. Simmons screamed, the gun falling into the dirt. Behind them, Diesel and Bones pushed the last Falcon soldiers toward the tree line. Engines roared again. Backup arriving from the next town over. Vultures from every chapter answering Grizz's call. The sound of 100 bikes drowned out the sirens that followed. The Falcons broke ranks and ran. Grizz pinned Simmons against the hood of a wrecked SUV. "You're gonna tell me where the rest of that evidence is," he growled. Simmons coughed blood, laughing. "You still don't get it, do you? That drive was just a decoy. The real files, Grace's files, they're somewhere only she knew." Grizz's grip tightened. "Then I'll find her." Simmons smiled, teeth red. "You're a little late, brother. The Falcons found her grave last night." A gunshot rang out. One final echo through the chaos. Simmons' body went limp. Grizz turned to see Dana, hands free now, standing in the doorway of the clubhouse with a smoking pistol. Tears streamed down her bruised face. "She's gone, Mason," she whispered. "Grace is gone. But she left something for you." Grizz stared, breath heavy, blood and smoke swirling around him. "What?" Dana reached into her torn jacket and pulled out a small, dirt-stained envelope. "She told me to give this to you if things ever went bad." Inside that envelope was a single key, and a name scribbled in Grace's handwriting. The church at Hollow Creek, basement, and under it, one more line. "If you're reading this, they're coming for the twins." The air was heavy with smoke and gunpowder. The battlefield that had once been the Iron Vulture's clubhouse now lay in ruins. Twisted metal, broken windows, and the smell of burnt gasoline lingering in the dawn air. Grizz stood at the edge of the wreckage, wiping blood from his cheek, staring down at the dirt-stained envelope in his hands. Grace's handwriting stared back at him. Sharp, clean, unmistakable. He'd buried too many ghosts to believe in miracles, but this felt like her voice reaching out from the grave. Dana stood nearby, holding Amira close while Jaden helped Bones clean a shallow cut on his arm. The twins looked exhausted, faces streaked with soot, but alive. Grizz finally spoke, voice low but firm. "We're going to Hollow Creek," Diesel frowned. "That's 30 miles out, boss. Ain't much left there but that old burned church and a swamp." "Exactly," Grizz said. "That's why she hid something there." Dana stepped forward, trembling. "Grace told me about that place once. Said it was the only spot in the county she ever felt safe." Grizz looked at her. "Then it's where we'll find what she wanted us to see." By mid-morning, the convoy of battered Harleys rolled out of Raven County. The twins rode with Dana in the sidecar of Grizz's bike, wrapped in jackets too big for them. The road stretched long and empty. Telephone poles leaning like tired sentinels, the woods pressing close. After an hour, the church came into view, or what was left of it. Hollow Creek Baptist, once white and proud, now stood blackened and hollow. The steeple had collapsed years ago, the front door half hanging from its hinges. The creek beside it was swollen from spring rain, whispering softly as the wind stirred the trees. The moment they stepped inside, Amira grabbed Jaden's arm. "It feels cold in here," she whispered. Dana looked around, her voice shaking. "This is where she used to hide when she was scared." Grizz pulled a flashlight from his vest, sweeping it across the cracked pews and broken glass. In the far corner, a small iron door stood half covered by fallen boards, the basement entrance. He walked over and jammed Grace's key into the lock. It turned with a heavy click. The smell of damp earth hit them as the door creaked open. They descended into the darkness, the flashlight beam bouncing off stone walls and shelves covered in dust. At the far end of the room was a single metal locker. On it, scrawled in faded white paint, were 3 words: "For my children." Dana gasped softly. She knew. Grizz crouched, pried the lock open, and swung the door wide. Inside were stacks of old files, a small black box, and a sealed envelope labeled "To Mason Walker." He opened the envelope, his rough fingers trembling. Inside was a letter written in Grace's unmistakable handwriting. "Mason, if you're reading this, then Earl found me, and I didn't make it out. You were right, the Falcons never died. They just put on badges and built new names. The twins aren't just my children. They're yours. Protect them the way you couldn't protect me. And if they come for them again, open the box. It's the only way to end this. Grizz froze. The flashlight trembled in his hand. Diesel whispered, "Boss." "What's it say?" But Grizz couldn't speak. His world had stopped moving. Jaden looked up, confused. "What's wrong?" Grizz crouched down, tears glistening in his eyes, the kind no one in the club had ever seen. "Son, there's something I need to tell you." Amira's small voice broke the silence. "Mama said we didn't have a daddy." Grizz smiled sadly. "She was wrong, sweetheart. You got one. You just didn't know he rode a Harley." For a second, the world seemed to pause, time holding its breath. Then the sound of distant engines shattered the peace. Bones ran up from outside, shouting, "Grizz, we got company! Falcons again! At least 20. Grizz looked down at the black box in his hands, the one Grace said to open if they came again. He snapped it open. Inside was a hard drive, a folded photo of Grace holding 2 newborn babies, and a small detonator switch wired to a blinking light. Grace hadn't just left them evidence, she'd left them power. And now, the question was whether Grizz would use it, to protect his kids, or to finish the war she started. The wind picked up over Hollow Creek, sweeping dead leaves across the broken church floorboards. The silence that followed Grace's letter was thin and fragile, the kind that breaks easy. Then the low rumble began. Engines, dozens of them. Bones was already outside shouting into the wind. "They're coming up the ridge. 4 trucks, 2 bikes, Falcons for sure." Diesel chambered around, eyes narrowing. "They just don't quit, do they?" Grizz stood by the basement steps, staring down at the black box Grace had left, the detonator still blinking, the hard drive glowing faintly in his hand. Dana's voice broke through the noise. "Mason, what did she leave you?" Grizz looked up, his face pale. Something she never meant for anyone to use unless there was no other way out. Jaden stepped closer, voice trembling. "What's it do?" Grizz's gaze hardened. "It ends them. For good." Outside, the Falcons spilled from their trucks, guns raised, boots crunching over gravel. Their leader, a tall, bald man with a scar across his cheek, shouted over the noise. "Walker, we know you're in there! Give us the drive and the kids, and maybe we'll leave what's left of you standing." Grizz stepped out into the doorway, his pistol steady. "You boys keep talking like you think you're the ones in charge," the man smirked. "You got a handful of tired bikers and 2 kids. I got 20 men, automatic rifles, and orders to burn this place to the ground. Then I'll save you the trouble," Grizz growled, and fired the first shot. The yard erupted in chaos. Diesel and Bones opened fire from behind an overturned truck. The Falcons fanned out, bullets slicing through the church windows. Dust and splinters flew as the old wood screamed under the impact. Jaden pulled Amira behind a fallen pew, while Dana grabbed a piece of broken glass and started cutting the rope off Bones' arm to help reload. "Mason!" Diesel shouted. "We're getting pinned!" Grizz crouched behind the doorframe, firing 2 clean shots before ducking back. "Just keep those kids safe." But the Falcons were closing in. One tossed a Molotov cocktail through the window. Flames exploded across the altar, licking up the old wooden beams. Smoke filled the air, choking, blinding. Amira coughed, eyes wide with fear. "Jaden, I'm scared!" I know, Jaden shouted, wrapping his arms around her. "Mama, we gotta get out!" Dana coughed, dragging them toward the basement door. "Move, baby, go!" Grizz saw them running and made his choice. He ripped open Grace's black box again and stared at the detonator, its light blinking faster now, like a heartbeat ready to stop. Grace's words echoed in his mind. "If they come for the twins again, open the box." "Mason," Diesel yelled through the smoke. "What are you doing?" Grizz shouted back. "Ending this!" He slammed his palm down on the detonator. For one long second, silence. Then the ground shook like thunder. The hillside behind the church split open as buried charges, set there years ago by Grace herself, erupted in a chain of explosions. Flames shot high into the air, swallowing the Falcons' trucks, their ammunition, and the men around them. The shockwave knocked everyone flat. The church shuddered, the old cross on its roof snapping and crashing into the fire. When the noise finally faded, the air was filled with the crackle of flames and the faint, distant cry of the creek. Diesel crawled out from behind a burned pew, coughing. "Boss, you still with me?" Grizz groaned, pushing himself up from the floor. "Still breathing." Bones stumbled toward the door. "They're gone. The whole Falcon squad's gone." Jaden and Amira rushed from the basement, clinging to their mother. "Mama, we thought—" "I'm here, baby," Dana sobbed, holding them close. Grizz leaned against the wall, chest heaving, his face lit by firelight. Diesel stared at him. Grace wired that hill, didn't she? Grizz nodded slowly. Yeah, she always planned ahead. Bones glanced around. Then what now? We just wait for the law to show up? Grizz looked toward the burning ridge, the place where the Falcons had finally fallen. No, we go public. We use what Grace left. No more hidin', no more secrets. But as the flames reflected in his eyes, Grizz didn't notice Jaden reach into the black box, turning the hard drive over in his small hands. Because written on the back, scratched into the metal, was a name no one recognized. Project Hollowborn. And whatever it was, Grace hadn't destroyed it. She'd only delayed it. The fire at Hollow Creek Church had burned through the night, reducing the wooden bones of the building to ash. By sunrise, only smoke and silence remained. Grizz stood on the hood of a ruined truck, scanning the horizon for movement. No falcons, no sirens, just the hollow wind brushing across the trees. He glanced over at Jaden, who was turning the small hard drive over in his hands. The one Grace had hidden inside the black box. On its scratched metal casing were 2 words carved deep. Project Hollowborn. Dana watched, her arm wrapped protectively around Amira. What does that even mean? She whispered. Grizz exhaled. It means Grace was in deeper than I ever knew. Diesel kicked at a charred beam. Boss, if she was running from the Falcons all those years, what the hell was she doing with a classified project? She was working in the county records office before she disappeared, Grizz said quietly. Had access to sealed files. Stuff from back when the Falcons were still in uniform. Bones frowned. You mean cops? Grizz nodded. And not just any cops. Federal. That hit everyone hard. Dana's eyes widened. You're telling me my sister was mixed up with the government? Grizz sighed. Not by choice. They used her. Just like they used me. He took the drive from Jaden and wiped the soot off its surface. This thing holds what Grace found before she died. And if I'm right, he looked toward the rising sun. It's the reason they came for the twins. They found an old motel 20 miles out, tucked behind a gas station that looked half dead. Inside, the power flickered but held. Diesel hooked the hard drive into his laptop, the screen lighting up the dim room in blue. Let's see what your woman was hidin', boss, Diesel muttered. The screen loaded. Folders and encrypted files. The first one opened to a government seal. United States Department of Defense. Classified. Dana covered her mouth. Oh my God. Grizz leaned forward, scanning the text that followed. Project Hollowborn Experimental DNA Preservation Program. Objective: to create adaptive biological resistance through multi-generational gene mapping. Primary subjects: Carter, Grace, volunteer. Secondary subjects: Carter, Amira, and Jaden. Gen 2 samples. The room went silent. Amira blinked. What's that mean? Dana shook her head, voice cracking. It means they used my sister as a test subject. And when she had you two, they made you part of it. Jaden's voice was small. We're part of an experiment? Grizz clenched his fists. Not anymore. Not as long as I'm still breathing. Diesel scrolled further down. There's more, boss. File marked Termination Order. He clicked it open. Subject Grace Carter. Terminated following breach and data theft. Remaining subjects: Amira and Jaden Carter. Assets to be retrieved by Falcon Division operatives. Status: active. Dana covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. They murdered her. They murdered my sister. Grizz's jaw tightened until it hurt. And now we know why the Falcons kept coming. Bones looked out the window. Boss, if the feds were behind this, they ain't gonna stop. You killed a whole team back there. They'll send more. Grizz nodded. Then we'll take the fight to them. Dana turned toward him. No, enough fighting. I can't lose the kids like I lost Grace. Grizz's voice softened. You won't. But if we don't expose this, they'll never stop hunting. He glanced at Jaden and Amira, both sitting silent, wide-eyed, caught between fear and disbelief. Jaden finally spoke. If Mama died to protect us, we can't just run, right? Grizz looked at him, proud, broken, determined. You're your mother's son. He turned to Diesel. Find me a way to upload this. We go public with it, everything. Diesel cracked his knuckles. Got a signal booster in the truck. But we'll need time, Grizz nodded. Then we'll buy it. He loaded his shotgun, the sound echoing like punctuation. But what none of them saw, not yet, was the black drone hovering high above the motel roof, its red light blinking like a quiet heartbeat. A satellite uplink locked onto the coordinates, and 300 miles away, in a cold federal office lit by flickering monitors, a voice said, Walker and the Carter twins have been located. Initiate retrieval. The air inside the Raven Pines motel was stale, heavy with cigarette smoke, fear, and the faint hum of the hard drive still spinning on Diesel's laptop. Grizz stood by the window, scanning the empty parking lot for headlights. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that always came before a storm. Bones paced near the door, shotgun in hand. We should have moved already, boss. They're tracking that drive, I can feel it. Grizz didn't look away from the window. Then they're coming. Question is, from where? Dana sat with the twins on the bed, her arms wrapped around them like a shield. Amira's eyes were wide, fixed on the flickering motel light outside. Jaden's hand gripped hers tightly. Mom, Jaden whispered. What happens if they find us? Dana smiled, though her voice trembled. Then your mama fights harder than she ever has before. But even as she said it, the low whine of engines filled the air. Grizz froze. Diesel's head snapped up. Bones swore under his breath. Black SUVs, 6 of them, rolled into the parking lot like a pack of wolves. Their headlights cut through the darkness. Doors slammed open in unison. Positions! Grizz barked. Diesel killed the laptop power. They're here! The first gunshot shattered the front window. Glass exploded inward. Jaden dove to the floor, dragging Amira with him as Dana threw herself over them. Bullets ripped through the wallpaper, plaster raining from the ceiling. Grizz fired back, his shotgun booming through the chaos. The recoil kicked against his shoulder, but he didn't stop. Diesel was beside him with an assault rifle, lighting up the parking lot in bursts of orange fire. Move the kids, Grizz shouted. Bones grabbed Dana's arm. Back exit, go! They ducked behind the bed, crawling toward the bathroom door that led to the back alley. The floor shook as bullets tore through the walls. Go now, Grizz yelled again, voice rough. Dana half-dragged, half-carried the twins through the narrow hallway. Amira screamed as another round tore through the wall inches from her head. Behind them, Grizz reloaded, stepping into the doorway. Covering you! He fired again and again, each shot louder than thunder. 2 agents went down near the SUVs, but more poured out. Armored, disciplined, silent. These weren't Falcons. These were government men. Boss, Diesel shouted, reloading. We gotta move! Grizz glanced back. The hallway was empty. Dana and the kids had made it through. He nodded once. Now. They fell back through the side door, boots slamming against the wet pavement. The motel behind them was already smoking, flames starting to crawl up the curtains. A flashbang exploded near the front, throwing Diesel to the ground. Grizz grabbed his arm, pulling him up. Come on! Bones covered their retreat, firing over his shoulder. We can't hold them! Don't need to! Grizz growled. We just gotta make it to the bikes. But when they reached the alley, the bikes were gone. Every last Harley had been torched, fuel tanks cracked open and burning. They hit him first, Diesel muttered. Grizz clenched his jaw. Then we run. He looked down the road. The woods weren't far. Beyond that, the old highway. And somewhere past that, Grace's other safe house. He remembered her handwriting, her voice whispering in the back of his mind. If they ever come for the twins again, go where it all began. Move, he shouted. They ran into the dark, branches slapping their faces, mud sucking at their boots. Behind them, the motel erupted in flames as the government team advanced. One of the agents spoke into his radio. Targets moving eastbound through the woods. Authorization to engage? A voice crackled back. Negative. Follow and contain. The twins are priority 1. Do not harm them. Deep in the forest, Jaden tripped over a root and fell, scraping his knee. Grizz stopped, kneeling beside him. You okay, kid? Jaden nodded, fighting tears. Yeah, but where are we going? Grizz looked toward the horizon, where a faint light blinked through the fog. To the place your mama never wanted me to see, he said quietly. Diesel caught up, panting. That's the old airfield, right? Grizz nodded grimly. Grace's final hideout, Bones cursed softly. And if the feds built Project Hollowborn there, they did, Grizz said, voice flat. And tonight we're gonna end it. But as they disappeared into the trees, the red dot of a sniper's scope slid across Grizz's back, and a voice whispered in an agent's earpiece, Do not shoot the man. He's not the target. The camera panned up, to a woman in tactical gear, eyes dark, face hidden beneath her helmet. The operative leading the hunt wasn't government. She was Grace Carter's twin sister, and she'd just switched sides. The woods opened into an overgrown clearing where rusted hangars squatted like forgotten beasts. The smell of jet fuel still clung to the dirt even after all those years. Grizz slowed, one hand raised for silence. Behind him, Dana, Jaden, and Amira breathed hard, mud streaked down their faces. Diesel and Bones spread out, weapons drawn. Through the mist, they saw it. A steel door glowing with a faint keypad light. Power still running. Looks abandoned, Diesel muttered. Grizz shook his head. Nothing with lights is abandoned. He crossed the field, each step sinking into damp earth. He entered the old code he remembered from his military days. Something Grace once whispered to him in a bar when trust still came easy. The lock clicked. The door swung inward to a staircase lit by cold fluorescence. The air smelled of antiseptic and metal. Dana hesitated. "You sure about this?" Grizz nodded. "This is where it ends." They descended into the belly of the hangar where rows of empty lab tables stretched under flickering bulbs. Broken computers lay in heaps. On one wall, a single screen glowed blue, still active. Grizz wiped the dust from it. The logo appeared, Hollowborn System Online. Before he could read further, a voice echoed through the speakers. Calm, female, unmistakable. "You finally made it, Mason." Everyone froze. Dana whispered, "Grace?" But when the figure stepped from the shadows, they saw the difference. Her hair was tied back tight, her uniform black, a sidearm on her hip. She looked like Grace, but harder, colder. "I'm not Grace," she said. "I'm Renee Carter, her sister. You killed half my team at Hollow Creek." Grizz raised his gun. "Your team was hunting kids." Renee didn't flinch. "Kids the government owns, whether you like it or not." Dana's voice cracked. "You're lying!" "Grace would never let that happen." Renee looked at her sharply. "Grace died trying to expose this program. I stayed to finish it." She walked closer, eyes never leaving Grizz. "You think this was about money or power?" Hollowborn was designed to protect humanity. An immunity project. Grace sabotaged it when she ran off with the data. And her children. Jaden stepped forward, trembling. "We're not an experiment." Renee's expression softened for a flicker of a second. "You're proof it worked." Grizz aimed higher. "So what now? You gonna drag him back to a lab?" "No," Renee said quietly. "I'm here to shut it down before the government restarts it. They sent me to retrieve the twins, but I'm giving you one chance. Walk away, and I'll erase them from every record that exists." Diesel snarled. "You expect us to trust another Carter in a uniform?" Renee ignored him, holding out a small data stick. "This contains the deactivation protocol. Plug it into the Hollowborn server, and everything goes dark. Every file, every backup. But once you start it, there's no undoing it. The blast wipes the servers and the entire facility." Grizz glanced at Dana, then at the twins. "What's the catch?" Renee's eyes flicked to the door behind her. "I stay. Someone has to trigger it manually." "No." Dana stepped forward. "You're not dying for their mess." Renee smiled faintly. "You don't understand. I already died the day Grace did." She pressed the stick into Grizz's palm. "She loved you. She trusted you. Finish what she couldn't." Outside, engines roared again, federal reinforcements closing in. Red lights flashed through the trees. Renee turned toward the console. "Get them out of here." Grizz hesitated only a heartbeat, then grabbed Dana's hand. "Move!" They ran back through the hangar as alarms blared. Behind them, Renee typed the final command. "System purge. 60 seconds." The walls trembled. Heat washed through the tunnels. When they burst into the open air, the first explosion thundered beneath their feet, blowing the hangar doors off their hinges. Fire roared upward, lighting the sky like sunrise. Grizz shielded the twins as debris rained down. Diesel pulled them toward the tree line until the world turned to smoke and silence. Hours later, as dawn crept over the hills, the family sat by the edge of the creek. Jaden leaned against Grizz's arm. "She looked like Mom," he said quietly. Grizz nodded. "She was the piece of your mama that never quit fightin'." Amira glanced at the rising sun. "So it's over?" Grizz watched the smoke curling on the horizon. "Yeah, sweetheart. It's over for them. But for us, it's just the start." Because somewhere, deep beneath that crater of ash, a single monitor still blinked. Hollowborn reboot, system backup found. Morning light crept over the ridge, thin and gray. Smoke still rose in the distance where the Hollow Creek airfield used to stand, curling up like a ghost that didn't know it was dead. The Iron Vultures and the Carter family camped beside the creek in silence. Everyone looked wrecked, soot-streaked, exhausted, running on the last drops of adrenaline. Grizz sat apart from the others, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers, watching the twins skip stones across the water. Diesel came up beside him. "You look like a man who ain't convinced it's over." Grizz exhaled smoke, eyes fixed on the rippling creek. "You ever seen a government project die easy?" Diesel grunted. "Never." Grizz took another drag. "Then you got your answer." A little farther down the bank, Dana washed blood off Amira's scraped knee. "You okay, baby?" Amira nodded, trying to be brave. "Mama was Aunt Renee bad." Dana paused. "No, sweetheart. She just got lost. Same as the rest of us." Jaden sat nearby, picking at the blackened USB stick they'd salvaged from the wreckage. The casing was half melted, the metal hot to the touch. "Grizz said we should destroy this," he murmured. Amira frowned. "But what if it's the only thing left of Mama?" He hesitated, then slipped it into his pocket when Dana wasn't looking. Behind them, Diesel's laptop beeped softly, a low, strange sound in the quiet morning. Grizz turned sharply. "You hear that?" Diesel frowned. "Yeah, but the hard drive's fried. It shouldn't even boot." They gathered around the screen. It flickered once, then lines of green code began to scroll across it like something alive. Hollowborn backup detected DNA host signal active tracking initiated. Dana's hand flew to her mouth. "What does that mean?" Grizz looked at the twins. "It means it's not done." Diesel stared at the lines of code. "Host signal? Mason, tell me that don't mean what I think it means." Grizz's face hardened. "The project's in them. Their DNA's the backup." Jaden froze. "You mean it's inside us?" Dana pulled them close. No, it can't be." But the laptop kept flashing, a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. "Activation protocol 1%, 2%, 3%. Kill the power," Grizz ordered. Diesel ripped the cable out. The screen went black. For a long moment, nobody moved. Only the sound of the creak filled the silence. Then Jaden whispered, "Mama, my arm hurts." Dana turned and froze. Thin blue veins were glowing faintly under Jaden's skin, spreading like lightning toward his wrist. "Grizz!" she screamed. Amira grabbed her brother's hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Jaden!" Grizz ran to them, kneeling in the mud. The glow pulsed, fading in and out, almost in rhythm with the heartbeat on the dead laptop. "Diesel, get me a med kit." "Now!" Diesel tore through his bag, hands shaking. "What the hell is this, Mason?" Grizz's jaw tightened. "It's Grace's insurance. She put part of the Hollowborn code in their DNA. So if the files ever got wiped, the system could rebuild from them." Dana's voice broke. "She used them?" "No," Grizz said quietly. "She saved them. She made them the only ones who could shut it down for good." Jaden gasped, clutching his arm. "It burns!" "Stay with me, kid," Grizz said, pressing a cold cloth over the veins. "Don't fight it. Breathe." Amira held his other hand, crying. "He's gonna be okay, right?" Grizz forced a smile. "He's tougher than he looks." The glow slowed, then faded. Jaden's breathing steadied, but when he opened his eyes, they shimmered faintly. The same deep blue as the veins. He whispered, "I can hear something." "In my head." "What do you hear, baby?" Dana asked. Jaden looked at her, confused. "It's a voice. It says, 'Return to Origin.'" Grizz stood slowly. "Origin?" Diesel met his eyes. "That's the main data core. They must have had a second facility." Grizz nodded grimly. "Then we finish this at the source." Dana shook her head. "No more running, Mason. No more fights." Grizz looked at the twins, at the faint glow still pulsing under Jaden's skin. "It's not about fighting anymore. It's about keeping them human." Because somewhere beyond Raven County, in a cold underground bunker humming with machines, another monitor flickered to life. "Reboot complete. Primary host signal confirmed. Sending retrieval unit." And deep inside that bunker, something opened its eyes. By nightfall, thunder rolled across the hills again. The air smelled of rain and metal as the small convoy pushed south toward Blackstone Ridge, where the first Hollowborn compound had been built decades earlier, long before Grace Carter ever knew what it was. Grizz rode point in a battered pickup, Diesel at the wheel, Bones watching the tree line. In the back seat, Dana held the twins close. Jaden's skin still shimmered faintly beneath his sleeve, each pulse of light slower now but steady. "Almost there," Grizz murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "If Grace was right, the core's under the ridge." Amira's voice was small. "Will it hurt?" Grizz turned halfway. "Not if we end it fast, sweetheart." No one spoke after that. Only the sound of rain drumming on the hood, steady as a heartbeat. The road ended at a chain-link fence twisted and half-buried in weeds. Beyond it, an old concrete hatch lay sunken in the ground. Faded stenciling read, U.S. Biodefense Div. Site H-01 Diesel crowbarred it open. A rush of stale air hissed upward. They descended into a corridor lined with blinking emergency lights. Somewhere deep below, a low electrical hum vibrated through the concrete. At the bottom stood a massive steel door, its panel glowing green. The same phrase repeated on the display. "Primary host approach detected." Dana whispered, "It knows he's here." Grizz looked at Jaden. "You ready, kid?" Jaden swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yeah." He stepped forward. The panel scanned his face, then his arm. A soft chime echoed. "Access granted." The door split open with a hiss. Inside was a vast chamber lit by rows of suspended cables feeding into a single cylindrical core. Inside that core swirled a pale blue light, the same color that pulsed in Jaden's veins. A voice filled the chamber, mechanical, but gentle. "Welcome back, Subject Alpha." Amira grabbed her brother's hand. "Don't listen!" The voice continued, smooth and calm. "You are the archive. Through you, the Hollowborn program lives. Upload complete in 3 minutes." Dana shouted, "Mason, stop it!" Grizz scanned the room, spotting the main console near the core. "Diesel, power feed, right side. Bones, cover the door!" He sprinted to the terminal, slamming the data stick Renee had given him into the port. The screen flickered. "Purge command ready," Grizz typed fast, hands trembling. Come on, come on." The voice shifted, colder now. "Unauthorized action detected. Countermeasure engaged." Sparks exploded from the wall. The lights dimmed. The core's light flared brighter, swirling faster. Jaden screamed, clutching his chest. "It's inside me!" "It's trying to—" Grizz rushed over, grabbing the boy's shoulders. "Fight it!" "You're stronger than it is." Jaden's voice broke. "I can't—" Amira stepped forward, eyes fierce through her tears. "Yes, you can. Mama said we're not their property." She pressed both hands to Jaden's, closing her eyes. The blue glow spread to her palms, brighter, steadier. The humming slowed. Grizz turned back to the console. "Diesel, now!" Diesel yanked the main power conduit free. Electricity arced across the floor. The voice faltered. "System integrity at risk. Host conflict detected." Grizz slammed the final key. "Grace, this is for you." Purge initiated. The core screamed, a rising metallic wail as the chamber shook. The blue light imploded inward, collapsing into darkness. Then, silence. Smoke curled from the servers. The humming stopped. Jaden sagged against his sister. The glow under his skin faded to nothing. Dana ran to them, sobbing. "It's over. It's really over." Grizz knelt beside them, exhausted, blood on his knuckles. "You two just did what a whole army couldn't," Diesel chuckled weakly. "Remind me never to bet against kids again." They climbed out just as dawn broke. The rain had washed the smoke from the sky, leaving the ridge quiet. Bones lit a flare and set it on the hatch. "So no one ever digs this up again." Dana looked at Grizz. "What now?" He stared toward the horizon. "Now we live. Grace gave her life for that. Be a damn shame not to use it." Jaden slipped his small hand into Grizz's. "You're really our dad, right?" Grizz smiled. A tired, honest smile. "Yeah, kid. Guess I am," Amira grinned. "Then can we ride one of those bikes when we get home?" Grizz laughed, the sound rough but real. "We'll see about that." They walked toward the rising sun, the iron vultures roaring to life behind them, engines echoing across the empty valley. But as the screen faded to black, deep under the ridge a single diode flickered back on. A synthetic voice whispered, "New protocol initiated. Subject Beta, Amira Carter, online. If this story moved you, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. Sometimes the end of a war isn't when the guns go quiet. It's when the people who survive decide they've had enough of running." For Mason Walker, the man the world once called Grizz, it wasn't bullets or blood that broke him. It was finding something worth protecting again. 2 children who carried more than pain in their veins. They carried hope. The iron vultures never rebuilt their clubhouse. They didn't need walls to know who they were anymore. They just rode through quiet towns, broken highways, and places where no one remembered the name Hollowborn. For Dana Carter, every sunrise was proof that her sister's sacrifice meant something. Grace hadn't just stopped a program. She'd given her family back their future. And for the Carter twins, life would never be ordinary. But maybe ordinary wasn't what the world needed anymore, because even after the fires burned out and the secrets turned to ash, something in them still remembered. Not the pain, not the fear, just the courage it took to stand up and say, "We're not experiments. We're human." And maybe that's all any of us are trying to prove, that we're more than what made us, and stronger than what tried to break us. If this story moved you, if it stirred something deep in your chest, made you pause for a second and really feel something, then don't just scroll away. Take a breath. Sit with it. Because stories like this aren't just about bikers, bullets, or secret projects hidden behind government walls. They're about people. People who break, bend, and still find the courage to stand up again. You saw it in Mason Walker, a man who had every reason to stay angry at the world but still chose to protect 2 kids who had no one else left. You saw it in Dana Carter, a mother who fought through fear, abuse, and loss, but never gave up on her children's right to live free. And you saw it in Jaden and Amira, 2 little souls born into a system that tried to define them, who learned that their blood didn't make them dangerous. It made them different. It made them alive. When you hit that like button, you're not just showing love for a video. You're helping stories like this reach the people who need to hear them. Maybe someone out there feels broken, like Grizz once did. Maybe someone's been told they don't matter, like Jaden and Amira were. Maybe someone's one small act of courage away from changing their whole life. And all it takes is a story to remind them what they're capable of. These aren't just short films. They're modern myths. Little pieces of truth wrapped in fiction, meant to spark something inside us that the world keeps trying to smother. Compassion. Because somewhere between the roar of engines and the crack of gunfire, there's a quieter heartbeat. The sound of someone choosing empathy over indifference. That's what the Iron Vultures stood for. That's what Grace Carter died for. And that's what these stories are about. So if this one left you with goosebumps, or tears you didn't expect, or that strange ache in your chest that comes when something real hits you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment. Tell us what part hit you hardest. Was it when Grizz found out he was the father? When the bikers surrounded the church? When the twins finally realized they were more than what the world made them? Every story we tell here is built to do one thing: make you feel. Because feeling is the first step toward change. And the world could use a little more of that right now. When you leave a comment, it's not just feedback. It's connection. Somebody, somewhere, will read your words and think, I'm not alone. That's how communities are built. That's how movements start. Not with politicians or speeches, but with ordinary people sharing extraordinary emotions. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about entertainment. It's about reflection. It's about the stories we don't see in the headlines. The kind that remind us that there's still good out there, hidden behind tattoos, scars, and second chances. Each story that comes next dives deeper into courage, justice, sacrifice, and the strange, beautiful mess of being human. Maybe it'll be another biker tale, about a man who stood up for a stranger and paid the price. Maybe it'll be a mother's story, about love powerful enough to rewrite destiny. Or maybe it'll be something unexpected, a story that starts in darkness and ends in light. Whatever it is, one thing's certain: it'll make you feel something real. That's what we promise here. No fake drama, no empty noise, just stories that pull you in and don't let go until the last second. Because in a world that moves too fast, we need reminders of what still matters. Not fame, not money, not numbers, but people, family, the small brave choices that define who we are when nobody's watching. And you, the viewer, are part of that. When you like, when you comment, when you share, you become a piece of this movement. You keep these stories alive. You give voice to the forgotten and hope to the tired. You help us show that empathy still has an audience, that good storytelling still has a heartbeat. So if something in this story made your chest tighten or your eyes sting, don't let that moment fade. Press that like button, not for algorithms, but as a quiet way of saying, I felt this. Write your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might reach someone who's fighting their own battle tonight. And if you want to walk with us through the next journey, another twist, another heartache, another triumph, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. That way, you won't just watch these stories, you'll live them with us. And if you've made it this far, thank you. You're why we tell these stories, because every click, every view, every word you leave behind proves that even in a noisy world, truth still echoes. The next story is already being written. One about love in the unlikeliest place, about justice where there should have been none, about the kind of courage that comes not from strength, but from pain. And when it drops, we want you there, first in line, ready to feel, ready to think, ready to remember what it means to care. So stay close, because the next story might not just change how you see courage, it might change how you see yourself.